I am Emily Foster, 28, and yesterday I rang the NASDAQ bell as my company went public at $1 billion valuation. 7 years ago, as I sat in my cap and gown, my father texted, "Don't expect help from me." He thought my computer science degree was worthless. My single mom, who worked 3 jobs to support us, cried tears of pride that day. Yesterday, my father watched from the audience as the stock ticker displayed my company's symbol. If you are watching this video, drop a comment letting me know where you are from, and hit that subscribe button to follow my journey from family rejection to unexpected success. The morning of my college graduation from MIT dawned bright and clear, a perfect New England spring day. I remember standing in front of the mirror in my small dorm room, carefully adjusting my cap and smoothing down the wrinkles in my gown. The tassel kept falling in my eyes, and my hands trembled slightly with excitement. This was supposed to be the proudest day of my life. I was the first person in my family to graduate college, and with a computer science degree from one of the most prestigious tech programs in the world. "You did it, Em," I whispered to my reflection, trying to calm my nerves. "You actually did it." Growing up in a small town outside of Philadelphia College had always seemed like a distant dream. My parents divorced when I was 12, a messy split that left emotional and financial wreckage in its wake. My father, David Foster, moved across the country to Seattle with his new wife, Gabrielle, a corporate attorney whose family had old money. He started a new life complete with a spacious lakeside home and country club memberships, while my mother, Karen, was left to raise me alone. Mom worked 3 jobs to keep us afloat. Mornings at the hospital cafeteria, evenings waiting tables, and weekends doing bookkeeping for local businesses. I still remember the smell of restaurant grease that seemed permanently embedded in her clothes, and the dark circles under her eyes that never quite disappeared. Despite her exhaustion, she never complained. Instead, she channeled all her hopes and dreams into me. "Education is the one thing no one can take from you," she would say, helping me with homework late into the night despite her own fatigue. My relationship with my father deteriorated after the divorce. Our communication dwindled to obligatory birthday calls and the occasional Christmas visit. When I was accepted to MIT with a partial scholarship, he acknowledged it with a brief "congratulations" text and a comment about the impracticality of student loans. No offer of financial assistance came despite his comfortable lifestyle. Still, as I prepared for graduation, some childish part of me hoped that this milestone would change things. He had agreed to come to the ceremony after all. Maybe seeing me in my cap and gown graduating with honors from one of the best computer science programs in the country would make him proud. Maybe it would bridge the gap that had grown between us over the years. I checked my phone for what felt like the 100th time that morning. No messages from him confirming his arrival, but I tried to stay positive. Mom had arrived the previous evening, taking the bus from Philadelphia and staying in a budget motel nearby. She had saved for months to afford the trip and a modest graduation gift. The thought of her sacrifice brought tears to my eyes. As I lined up with my fellow graduates, scanning the gathering crowd for any sign of my father, my phone vibrated in the pocket I had sewn into my gown specifically to hold it. My heart leaped, thinking it must be him letting me know he had arrived. I discreetly pulled it out, smiling in anticipation. The smile froze on my face as I read his message. "Don't expect help from me. You chose the wrong major. Time to stand on your own." My hands went numb. The noise of the excited graduates around me faded to a distant buzz. I read the message again, hoping I had somehow misunderstood, but the words remained unchanged. Not only was he not coming, but he was also making it clear that I was on my own. On my graduation day, I fought back tears as the procession began moving. This should have been a moment of pure pride and accomplishment, but instead, I felt a hollow ache in my chest. The phone felt heavy in my pocket, the message burning into my thoughts. When they called my name and I walked across that stage, I forced a smile. I could see my mother in the audience, standing and cheering louder than anyone, tears streaming down her face. Her pride was genuine and complete, untainted by conditions or expectations. In that moment, looking at her worn face alight with joy, something hardened within me. A resolve took shape. I would prove him wrong, not just about the value of my degree, but about me. After the ceremony, I found my mother waiting with a small bouquet of daisies, my favorite flower. She hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe. "I am so proud of you, baby," she whispered, her voice breaking. So proud. I couldn't bring myself to tell her about the text. Not today. Not when she had sacrificed so much to be here. Instead, I hugged her back, drawing strength from her unconditional support. As we were leaving the reception, Professor Martinez, my programming mentor, approached us. A brilliant woman who had pioneered work in cybersecurity, she had taken an interest in my final project, a new approach to encryption for cloud-based applications. "Emily, I was hoping to catch you," she said, extending her hand to my mother. "You must be Karen. Your daughter is one of the most promising students I have had in years." My mother beamed, and for a moment the sting of my father's rejection lessened slightly. "I wanted to talk to you about an opportunity," Professor Martinez continued, turning back to me. "There is a startup incubator program in San Francisco that is looking for innovative thinkers in cybersecurity. I think you would be perfect for it." She handed me a business card with a name and number scribbled on the back. "They provide modest funding, workspace, and mentorship for 6 months. It is competitive, but I have already put in a good word for you." I stared at the card possibilities suddenly unfolding before me. San Francisco, a startup incubator, a chance to develop my ideas with actual support. "Thank you." I managed, genuinely moved by her belief in me. "I will definitely call them." Later that night, as my mother slept in the motel room we were sharing, I sat by the window looking out at the campus lights. I pulled out my phone and reread my father's message, feeling the hurt and anger wash over me again. Then I looked at Professor Martinez's card. My father thought I had chosen the wrong major, that my computer science degree was worthless. He had written me off, closed the door on any support, financial or otherwise. Well, I would show him exactly what this worthless degree could do. I would take this opportunity in San Francisco, and I would build something significant, something that even he could not ignore. I sent a text to the number on the card introducing myself and expressing interest in the program. Then I deleted my father's message and went to bed, my mind already racing toward the future. 2 weeks after graduation, I found myself standing in a tiny studio apartment in San Francisco's Mission District, surrounded by unpacked boxes and secondhand furniture I had purchased from the previous tenant. The apartment was barely 400 square feet, with a kitchenette that consisted of a mini fridge, a 2-burner stove, and about 1 square foot of counter space. The bathroom sink leaked, and I could hear every word of my neighbors' conversations through the thin walls. But the rent took nearly 70% of my monthly stipend from the incubator program, leaving me with barely enough for food and public transportation. "Home sweet home," I muttered to myself, trying to ignore the sinking feeling in my stomach. The tech incubator, called Launchpad, was located in a renovated warehouse in Soma. On my first day, I arrived early, dressed in my most professional outfit, a blazer and slacks I had found at a thrift store. The space was open concept, with different startups clustered at communal tables, the air buzzing with energy and ideas. Most of the other entrepreneurs seemed to know each other already, talking animatedly about funding rounds and user acquisition strategies. I stood awkwardly near the entrance, feeling like an imposter. Everyone looked older, more confident, more like they belonged in this world of startups and venture capital. Most were men, many from wealthy backgrounds, who had safety nets I could only dream of. I clutched my laptop bag tighter, trying to quiet the voice in my head saying I had made a terrible mistake. "First day?" a voice asked beside me. I turned to see a tall guy with glasses and a friendly smile. He extended his hand. "Ryan Chen, I am part of the new cohort too, drowning in imposter syndrome already." His candidness made me laugh, breaking the tension. "Emily Foster, is it that obvious?" "Only because I feel exactly the same way," he admitted. "My project is a machine learning algorithm for medical diagnostics. How about you?" "Cybersecurity. I am developing a new encryption protocol for cloud services," I replied, feeling a little more at ease. "Cool, very needed in this era of data breaches," Ryan said with genuine interest. "Want to grab a table together, strength in numbers against all these tech bros." That first connection made the overwhelming environment slightly more manageable. As the day progressed, we met Aisha Johnson, a marketing whiz who had worked at several tech companies before deciding to join the startup world. The three of us clicked immediately, our skills complementing each other in ways that seemed almost serendipitous. Over coffee that stretched into lunch, we discovered we had similar visions for what technology could achieve. By the end of the day, we had decided to merge our individual projects into one company. Ryan's machine learning expertise, my cybersecurity innovation, and Aisha's marketing knowledge formed the foundation of what would eventually become Secure Shield. The following weeks were a blur of activity. Days stretched into nights as we refined our concept-built prototypes and prepared pitch decks. My tiny apartment became our unofficial headquarters, with Ryan and Aisha often sleeping on my floor when we worked too late to justify going home. We sustained ourselves on instant ramen-free pizza from Launchpad events and an unhealthy amount of coffee. The technical challenges were immense. I was attempting to create a security system that learned and adapted to threats in real time, something that required cutting-edge programming and endless debugging sessions. There were nights I wanted to scream in frustration as code failed to compile or algorithms produced unexpected results. But the hardest part was not the technical challenges. It was the constant rejection from potential investors. Our first pitch event was a disaster. 5 venture capitalists sat stone-faced as I stumbled through our presentation, my voice shaking with nerves. The questions afterward were brutal. "So you are what, 22?" one investor asked dismissively. "With no actual industry experience." 21, sir. But I have been coding since I was 12, and my thesis project at MIT won the department's Innovation Award. I replied, trying to sound confident. He said, clearly unimpressed. "And who would be CEO of this venture?" I would, I answered, standing a little straighter. The investors exchanged glances, barely concealing their skepticism. One actually laughed. "Perhaps you should consider bringing on a more experienced CEO," another suggested. "Someone with a track record. You could stay on as CTO, focus on the technical side." I left that meeting feeling humiliated. It wasn't just my age they had a problem with, it was my gender. None of the male founders had been asked to step aside from CEO roles, regardless of their age or experience. The rejections continued, each one striking at my already fragile confidence. Meanwhile, my credit card debt mounted. As I covered expenses, the stipend didn't. I had taken to skipping meals to stretch my budget, and was selling belongings on online marketplaces to make ends meet. Then came the call from my mother. Her voice sounded strained as she explained that she needed surgery for a problem with her gallbladder. It wasn't life-threatening, but she would be out of work for at least a month with no paid sick leave. "I will be fine, honey," she insisted when I expressed concern about her finances. "I have been putting a little aside each month." I knew this wasn't true. My mother lived paycheck to paycheck, any savings would be minimal at best. The guilt was overwhelming. She had sacrificed everything for my education, and here I was unable to help her when she needed it. I should be taking care of her, not pursuing this seemingly impossible dream in one of the most expensive cities in the country. That night, after Ryan and Aisha had gone home, I sat on my bed and cried until my head ached. Maybe my father was right. Maybe this had all been a foolish choice. I could get a corporate job, a stable position at an established tech company. The starting salary would be enough to help my mother and begin paying down my debts. The next day brought the lowest point yet. We had finally secured a demonstration for a potential angel investor, someone who had expressed genuine interest in our concept. Everything was prepared, our prototype polished as much as possible given our constraints. And then in the middle of the demonstration, the system crashed completely. Blue screen total failure in front of the one investor who had taken us seriously. I felt physically ill as I tried to restart the program, muttering apologies, my face burning with embarrassment. The investor left politely, but quickly his interest clearly evaporated. "I am sorry," I told Ryan and Aisha afterward, my voice hollow. "I think I need to consider other options. Maybe this was all a mistake." They protested, of course, but I could see the doubt in their eyes too. We had been at this for 4 months, with nothing to show but debt and disappointment. That night, unable to sleep, I returned to our code. If this was going to be the end, I at least wanted to understand why the system had failed. Hours passed as I combed through thousands of lines, testing and retesting different components. And then at 3:47 a.m. I found it. a simple error in how the machine learning algorithm interfaced with my encryption protocol. So simple, yet it had eluded me for weeks. I fixed it, ran a test, and watched in disbelief as the system performed flawlessly better than it ever had before. I called Ryan and Aisha immediately, not caring about the hour. They arrived at my apartment within 30 minutes, and together we watched the system run test after test without a single failure. The next day, fueled by renewed hope and very little sleep, we reached out to every contact we had made. One of them, a woman who had given me her card after a networking event, agreed to meet us again. Amanda Rivera was a former tech executive turned angel investor who focused specifically on female founders. Our demonstration for her was perfect. The system handled every test scenario flawlessly, and our pitch, practiced to exhaustion, was clear and compelling. 2 days later, she offered us $300,000 in seed funding in exchange for a 15% equity stake. As we signed the paperwork making our company official, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. We had a real chance now. Funding to develop our product properly, to pay ourselves modest salaries, to move forward. Secure Shield, I said, looking at the company name on the documents. It is real now. I thought briefly of texting my father telling him about this first success. But I decided against it. This was just the beginning, and I had nothing to prove to him yet. But someday I promised myself he would see exactly what his wrong major daughter had accomplished. 2 years flew by in what felt like both an eternity and an instant. Secure Shield had grown from our 3-person founding team to 15 employees with an actual office in Soma that did not double as my bedroom. Our seed funding had been followed by a successful Series A round of $2 million, allowing us to expand our team and refine our product. Our first major client, Bay Area Financial Credit Union, had signed on 6 months earlier, implementing our security system across their digital banking platform. It was a mid-sized institution, not a banking giant, but it gave us credibility and a case study to show potential clients. My role as CEO had evolved dramatically. Instead of spending all day coding, I now divided my time between technical oversight, client meetings, and investor relations. I had developed a leadership style that played to my strengths. Technical expertise combined with clear communication and a collaborative approach. Rather than trying to mimic the aggressive, dominant style of many male tech CEOs, I focused on building a team where everyone felt valued and heard. The quarterly numbers look promising, said Jacob Williams, our recently hired CFO, sliding a report across my desk. Jacob was a significant addition to our team, a seasoned finance professional who had worked at several successful startups. At 45, he brought experience and credibility that helped us with investors who still harbored doubts about my youth. Client retention is at 97%, and we have 5 new implementation projects starting next month, he continued. If this trajectory holds, we will be profitable by the end of next year. I nodded, scanning the figures. What about the Series B preparations? Are we on track? Yes, the deck is nearly ready. I think we should target 8 to 10 million for this round, given our growth rate and market potential. As Jacob left my office, I felt a moment of genuine pride. We were building something real, something valuable. Our security system was protecting thousands of people's financial data, and our approach to adaptive cybersecurity was gaining recognition in the industry. That evening, on an impulse, I drafted an email to my father. We had barely communicated since graduation, just obligatory holiday messages and brief responses to his occasional inquiries. But Secure Shield was gaining momentum, even being mentioned in some tech publications. Perhaps now he would see that my choice had not been a mistake after all. I kept the email factual, professional, sharing our recent client acquisition and mentioning the upcoming funding round. I attached a link to a TechCrunch article that had featured our company in a roundup of promising security startups. His response came the next morning. Interesting. Hope it works out for you. 5 words. No congratulations, no questions about the company, no acknowledgement of what we had achieved already. Just hope it works out. As if I were telling him about a hobby, not a growing business with 15 employees and millions in funding. I deleted the email, trying to ignore the familiar sting of his dismissal. Why did I even bother? What was I still seeking from him after all this time? A week later, My mother mentioned during our weekly call that she had run into my father's brother at the grocery store. Uncle Steve said the strangest thing, she said. Apparently, your father has been telling everyone about his daughter, the tech entrepreneur, and showing people articles about your company. Steve said he brags about you constantly. I nearly dropped my phone in shock. What? He barely acknowledges my updates when I send them directly to him. I know, my mother sighed. He has always been like that, unable to show pride or affection directly, but happy to use your accomplishments to boost his own image with others. The revelation left me with complicated feelings. On one hand, it was oddly validating to know he was proud enough to brag about me. On the other, it was infuriating that he could not express that pride to me directly, that he was using my success as social currency, while continuing to be cold and dismissive in our actual relationship. I pushed these personal concerns aside as Secure Shield continued to grow. We moved to a larger office to accommodate our expanding team. Industry publications began to take more notice of our innovative approach to cybersecurity. I was invited to speak at conferences, initially on technical panels, but increasingly as a featured speaker. After one such conference, I was approached by Maxim Volkov, the CEO of Tech Giant, one of the largest technology companies in the world. Your presentation was impressive, he said, shaking my hand with a grip that was a little too firm. We should talk. Tech Giant is always looking for innovative security solutions to integrate into our ecosystem. What followed was not a partnership discussion as I had anticipated, but an acquisition offer. Tech Giant would buy Secure Shield for $30 million, folding our technology into their existing security infrastructure. I would join their executive team as a vice president of security innovation with a 3-year contract. The offer sparked intense debate among our leadership team. Aisha and several others saw it as a tremendous opportunity, a successful exit that would provide financial security for everyone involved. Think about it, Emily, she urged during a heated discussion in our conference room. $30 million. That is life-changing money for all of us, and your technology would reach millions more users through Tech Giant's platform. Ryan and Jacob were more cautious, questioning whether our vision would survive within a corporate giant. They are not buying us for our culture or our approach, Ryan argued. They want the technology, and once they have it, your role will be to maintain it, not innovate or expand it. I spent sleepless nights weighing the decision. $30 million would indeed be life-changing. My mother could retire immediately. I could pay off my student loans and never worry about financial security again. It was the kind of exit most startups dream of. But something felt wrong about it. We were just beginning to realize our potential, just starting to see the impact our technology could have. Did I really want to hand that over to Tech Giant to become just another acquisition in their portfolio? In the end, I declined the offer, a decision that shocked many in the tech community. Tech Giant was not used to being turned down, especially by small startups led by young founders. We are building Secure Shield for the long term, I explained to our team. Our mission is not just to create value for shareholders, but to fundamentally improve digital security for everyone. We can have a greater impact as an independent company committed to that vision. Most of the team supported the decision once I explained my reasoning, but it created tension with some investors who had been eager for an early return on their investment. I had to work hard to bring them back on board with our longer-term vision. Throughout this period of growth and challenges, one bright spot remained constant: our impact on my mother's life. With my salary now stable and substantial, I had been able to fulfill a childhood promise. I bought her a small but beautiful house in a safe neighborhood with a garden for the flowers she had always wanted to grow. The day I handed her the keys, watching her walk through rooms that belonged solely to her for the first time in her life, was perhaps the proudest moment of my journey so far. "You did not have to do this, Emily," she said, tears in her eyes. "Yes, I did," I replied, hugging her tightly. "Everything I am, everything I have achieved, is because you believed in me when no one else did." As Secure Shield celebrated its first million in revenue, I found myself reflecting on how far we had come from those desperate days in my tiny apartment. We had proven that our concept was viable, that our technology was valuable, that I could lead a growing company despite my youth and gender. The only validation still missing was from the one person who had dismissed me so completely on what should have been one of the proudest days of my life. But I was beginning to understand that his approval might never come, at least not in the way I had once hoped for. And perhaps that was a lesson in itself, learning that external validation, even from a parent, could not be the measure of my worth or success. Secure Shield had grown to 50 employees with offices in San Francisco and a new satellite location in Boston. Our client list included several major financial institutions and healthcare providers organizations for whom data security was not just important, but critical. Our Series B funding of $12 million had exceeded our initial target, valuing the company at $100 million, a milestone that still seems surreal to me. Then came the call that would test everything we had built. It was 2 a.m. when my phone rang, jolting me from sleep. On the screen was the name of our head of security operations, Michael Torres. "Emily, we have a situation," he said, his voice tense. "Central Bay Hospital is reporting unauthorized access to patient records. Their security team believes it came through our integration point." I was instantly alert, adrenaline clearing any remnants of sleep from my mind. Central Bay was one of our largest clients, a hospital system with sensitive data on hundreds of thousands of patients. "How bad is it?" I asked, already getting out of bed and reaching for my laptop. "Potentially very bad. Their initial assessment suggests personal and medical information for up to 50,000 patients may have been accessed." Within an hour, our entire technical team was assembled in our office, remotely connected to Central Bay's systems, working to understand what had happened and stop any ongoing data extraction. The mood was grim-focused, the only sounds the clicking of keyboards and occasional murmured consultations. By morning, we had contained the breach, but the damage was done. Patient names, addresses, social security numbers, and medical histories had been accessed. While we had stopped the attack before the data could be fully exfiltrated, the breach was significant enough to trigger regulatory reporting requirements and, inevitably, media attention. The story broke on tech news sites first, then spread to mainstream media by afternoon. "Major security failure at Secure Shield exposes patient data," read the headlines. Our stock price on private exchanges plummeted. Clients began calling, concerned about their own vulnerability. Then came the call from Janet Richardson, the lead investor from our Series B round. "The board is convening an emergency meeting at 4 p.m., she informed me, her tone carefully neutral. "We need to discuss the breach and appropriate responses." I knew what that meant. They were considering replacing me as CEO. It was a common move when startups faced crises, bringing in adult supervision in the form of more experienced executives. Despite 2 years of successful leadership, despite growing the company from nothing to a $100 million valuation, one security incident could be enough for investors to lose faith in me. The board meeting was as difficult as I had anticipated. Seated around our conference table were our major investors and several independent board members, their expressions serious, some openly hostile. "This breach represents a fundamental failure," said Mark Davidson, one of our early investors. "We need to consider whether the current leadership team has the experience to handle a crisis of this magnitude." "Several executive search firms have already reached out," added another board member. "There are experienced CEOs with backgrounds in crisis management who could step in immediately." I sat quietly listening to them discuss my replacement, as if I were not in the room. It was graduation day all over again, being dismissed and underestimated, having my capabilities questioned because of factors beyond my control. But this time was different. This time I knew my worth. I knew what I had built. When they finally turned to me for my response, I was ready. "I understand your concerns," I began, my voice steady. "The breach is serious, and as CEO, I take full responsibility. But replacing leadership in the middle of a crisis creates more instability, not less. More importantly, I believe the breach was not due to a flaw in our core security architecture." I presented the preliminary findings from our investigation, which suggested the attack had used a sophisticated method that targeted a specific configuration at Central Bay, not a general vulnerability in our system. "Give my team 48 hours," I requested. "We will identify exactly what happened, how it happened, and implement not just a fix, but an enhancement that will prevent similar attacks across all client implementations." There was skepticism. but they agreed to the deadline perhaps more out of a desire to have a comprehensive understanding of the failure before announcing a leadership change than out of faith in my ability to resolve it. For the next 2 days, I barely left the office. Our technical team worked around the clock, analyzing logs, testing hypotheses, and developing solutions. I coded alongside them, returning to my roots as a programmer, diving deep into the system I had originally designed. On the morning of the second day at 4:13 a.m., we found it. The breach had not exploited a flaw in our core system, but had used a previously unknown vulnerability in a third-party API that many of our healthcare clients integrated with. More critically, we discovered that the attack pattern matched those used by a state-sponsored hacking group known for targeting healthcare data. This was not just a technical failure, it was a sophisticated attack by one of the most advanced threat actors in the world. And while that did not absolve us of responsibility, it placed the breach in a different context. We immediately developed a patch for the vulnerability and an enhanced monitoring system that could detect similar attack patterns in the future. But I pushed the team to go further, to use this incident as an opportunity to fundamentally improve our security model. By the time of the follow-up board meeting, we had not only fixed the immediate issue, but had developed a significant enhancement to our entire security architecture, one that would make similar breaches much more difficult to execute regardless of the skill of the attackers. I presented our findings and solution to the board with confidence, demonstrating both technical expertise and leadership under pressure. I showed how we had communicated transparently with affected clients, regulatory bodies, and even the press. Most importantly, I outlined how this incident, while painful, had resulted in a stronger product and valuable lessons for our company. Replacing me now would send a message to our team, our clients, and our market that we panic at the first sign of trouble. I concluded. Instead, we should show that Secure Shield faces challenges head-on, learns from them, and emerges stronger. The room was silent for a moment after I finished. Then Janet spoke a note of respect in her voice that had not been there before. I think Emily has demonstrated exactly the kind of leadership we need in a crisis. The technical solution is impressive, but more importantly, she has shown maturity and responsibility in her response. I move that we formally express our continued confidence in her as CEO. The vote was unanimous. I had weathered my first major crisis as a leader, not by avoiding responsibility, but by facing it directly and finding a path forward. In the aftermath, something unexpected happened. Our transparent handling of the breach and the innovative solution we developed actually enhanced our reputation within the industry. A prominent security analyst wrote a detailed assessment of our response, calling it a masterclass in crisis management and technical problem solving. New clients impressed by our honesty and resilience signed contracts. Our stock price on private exchanges not only recovered, but surpassed its previous high. It was in this context, riding the wave of our strengthened position, that I received an email that caught me completely by surprise. It was from my father, asking if we could meet for dinner during his upcoming business trip to San Francisco. I agreed more out of curiosity than any expectation of a meaningful connection. We met at an upscale restaurant near Union Square, the kind of place that would have been completely out of my budget during my early startup days. My father arrived in an expensive suit, looking older than I remembered, but still carrying himself with the same confident air. He greeted me with an awkward hug, the first physical contact between us in years. "You look well," he said as we sat down. "Success suits you." "Thank you," I replied, unsure how to respond to the sudden warmth in his manner. The conversation was stilted at first, focusing on safe topics like the restaurant and the weather in San Francisco compared to Seattle. Then, after ordering, he cleared his throat and adopted a more serious expression. "I have been following your company's progress," he said. "The security breach made the national news, but so did your recovery. Quite impressive." "It was a team effort," I replied automatically, though I felt a small glow at the unexpected praise. "I have connections in several Fortune 500 companies," he continued. "I could make some introductions if you are looking to expand your client base. Now that you have proven yourself, I would be happy to help." The words, "now that you have proven yourself," hung in the air between us. So that was it. Now that I was successful, now that Secure Shield was valued at over 100 million and mentioned in major business publications, now he was willing to acknowledge my worth and offer his assistance. "Thank you for the offer," I said carefully. "But we have a strong sales team and client pipeline. We are doing quite well on our own." A flicker of surprise crossed his face, as if it had not occurred to him that I might decline his belated offer of support. "Well, the offer stands," he said, recovering quickly. "I am proud of what you have accomplished, Emily. You have proven to be quite capable." I nodded, accepting the compliment at face value while recognizing its limitations. He was proud of my success, but had he learned to value me as a person, not just as an achievement? Had he recognized the harm done by his rejection at my graduation, or was he simply trying to associate himself with my success, now that it was established? The dinner concluded pleasantly enough, but as I watched him leave in his luxury car, I felt oddly empty. The validation I had once desperately craved from him now seemed hollow, coming as it did only after external markers of success. I realized I no longer needed his approval to feel confident in my choices or my worth. This revelation was both liberating and a little sad. Liberating to know that I had outgrown the need for his validation. Sad to recognize that our relationship might never be what I had once hoped for. As I returned to my apartment that night, I found myself thinking about the different types of support I had received on my journey. My mother's unwavering belief in me even when she did not understand the technical details of my work. Professor Martinez's mentorship and connection to the incubator program. Ryan and Aisha's partnership through the desperate early days. Jacob's experience and guidance as we navigated growth. None of them had waited until I was successful to offer their support. They had invested in me in different ways, when the outcome was still uncertain. That I realized was the true measure of belief in someone, not congratulations, that came after the hardest part was already done. 3 years had passed since the Central Bay Hospital breach, years of steady growth, and increasing industry recognition for Secure Shield. We now employed over 200 people across offices in San Francisco, Boston, and London, with clients ranging from regional banks to multinational corporations concerned about data security. Our annual revenue had crossed $75 million with consistent profitability for the past 2 years. The company valuation in our most recent private funding round had reached now $950 million, placing us just shy of the coveted unicorn status in startup terminology. It was a Tuesday morning when Jacob knocked on my office door, his expression more serious than usual. He closed the door behind him and took a seat across from my desk. "I have been running the numbers, Emily," he began, "and I have had discussions with several investment banks. I think it is time we consider going public." The suggestion was not entirely unexpected. We had grown to a size where an IPO made sense, and our financial performance would be attractive to public market investors. Still, it represented a massive step one that would fundamentally change the nature of our company. "Talk me through your thinking," I said, leaning back in my chair. Jacob opened his laptop and presented a detailed analysis of our financials, market conditions, and comparable public offerings. The case was compelling. Our growth rate, profit margins, and addressable market would likely result in a successful IPO, with a valuation well over $1 billion. The roadshow would need to begin in about 3 months if we want to go public before the end of the year, he concluded. That gives us time to prepare the S-1 filing and get everything in order. I nodded slowly, taking it all in. "Let us discuss it with the executive team tomorrow, but I think you are right. It is time." The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Preparing a company for an IPO was an enormous undertaking, requiring extensive financial audits, legal reviews, and strategic planning. Our leadership team worked closely with lawyers, investment bankers, and accountants to prepare the necessary documentation and filings with the Securities and Exchange Commission. 3 major investment banks competed to lead our public offering, each presenting their case for why they would be the best partner for Secure Shield's market debut. We ultimately selected Goldman Sachs as our lead underwriter, impressed by their understanding of our technology and vision for the company's future. Valuation discussions were intense, with initial estimates placing Secure Shield's market value between $1.2 and $1.5 billion. The numbers were staggering to someone who had started with nothing but a promising algorithm and maxed out credit cards just 6 years earlier. As the IPO preparations intensified, So did media interest in SecureShield and in me personally. As a rare female founder taking a tech company public, I became the subject of profiles in business publications and technology websites. Forbes included me in their 30 Under 30 list and ran a feature story titled Secure Shield's Emily Foster Tech's Next Billion-Dollar Woman. The increased visibility brought uncomfortable scrutiny as well. Some financial analysts questioned whether I had the experience to lead a public company, suggesting that SecureShield should bring in a more seasoned CEO before the IPO. Others dug into my background, contrasting my current success with my modest upbringing and student loan debt. Through it all, I tried to stay focused on the roadshow preparations. This crucial series of presentations to potential investors would help determine our initial stock price and overall market reception. I practiced my pitch relentlessly, working with communications coaches to refine my messaging and presentation style. The roadshow schedule was grueling, taking us to 12 cities in 15 days. We met with hundreds of potential investors, from massive institutional funds to smaller firms specializing in technology stocks. The questions were often challenging, sometimes overtly skeptical about my leadership, despite our track record of success. "You are quite young to be leading a public company," said one portfolio manager in Boston, his tone condescending. "Have you considered bringing in a more experienced CEO and moving to a CTO role?" "I have been leading SecureShield successfully for 6 years," I responded evenly. "During that time, we have grown from 0 to 75 million in annual revenue, weathered major market challenges, and consistently outperformed our competitors. My age and gender have no bearing on those results." Some meetings went brilliantly, with investors clearly excited by our technology and growth potential. Others were more difficult, requiring detailed technical explanations and financial justifications for our valuation. Midway through the roadshow, I received a surprising call. My father's name appeared on my phone screen as I was returning to my hotel after a long day of investor meetings in Chicago. "Emily," he said when I answered, his voice unusually warm, "I just wanted to congratulate you on the Forbes article. Going public at $1 billion valuation, that is quite an achievement." "Thank you," I replied, genuinely surprised by the call. "I always knew you had potential." He continued a revision of history that made me grip the phone tighter. "When you see your name on the NASDAQ board, know that I will be thinking of you with pride." The conversation was brief, but left me with conflicted feelings. On one hand, this was perhaps the most direct expression of pride I had ever received from him. On the other, it came only after public recognition in Forbes, only after the world had already validated my worth. The final pre-IPO board meeting took place a week before our scheduled market debut. The underwriters presented their final assessment of market interest, which had exceeded expectations. "Based on the roadshow response, we recommend setting the initial offering price at $28 per share," the Goldman Sachs representative advised. "That would value SecureShield at approximately $1.7 billion and raise just over $200 million in the offering." The board approved the recommendation unanimously. As the meeting concluded, Janet Richardson, who had stood by me during the security breach crisis 3 years earlier, pulled me aside. "You have done something remarkable here, Emily," she said. "No matter what happens with the stock price, remember that you built something valuable from nothing. That is the true measure of success." The night before the IPO, I found myself unable to sleep. I stood at the window of my hotel room in New York, looking out at the city lights, reflecting on the journey that had brought me here. From that crushing text message on graduation day to the brink of becoming the CEO of a public company valued at nearly $2 billion. I thought of my mother, who would be joining me at the NASDAQ tomorrow, whose unwavering support had made all of this possible. I thought of Ryan and Aisha, my original co-founders, who had taken a chance on a shared vision when we had nothing but ideas. I thought of Jacob, whose financial expertise had guided us to this moment. And yes, I thought of my father, who had dismissed my potential and then tried to claim credit for my independence when success arrived. I had invited him to the IPO ceremony not out of a desire for reconciliation, but because I wanted him to witness firsthand what I had accomplished, despite his lack of support. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was Jacob. "Everything is set," he said, his voice reflecting the excitement we all felt. The final paperwork is signed, the shares are allocated. Tomorrow, we go public. As I finally drifted off to sleep in the early hours of the morning, I felt a strange sense of peace. Whatever happened tomorrow, we had already succeeded in building something meaningful, something that mattered. The stock price was just a number. The culmination of years of work was the true reward. The morning of our IPO dawned clear and crisp in New York City, a perfect October day. I stood in my hotel suite carefully adjusting the blazer of my new suit, a significant upgrade from the thrift store outfit I had worn on my first day at the incubator. My reflection showed someone I barely recognized, a poised executive ready to take a company public. Not the nervous graduate who had once received that devastating text message. A knock at the door announced the arrival of our executive team. Jacob, Ryan, Aisha, and our other senior leaders had gathered, all dressed in their finest excitement, evident on every face. "Ready to make history?" Ryan asked with a grin. We traveled together to the NASDAQ market site in Times Square, the iconic location where companies ring the opening bell to celebrate their public debut. The building was already adorned with Secure Shield's logo and branding, a surreal sight that made the magnitude of the day hit home. Inside, we were escorted to a preparation area where NASDAQ officials briefed us on the ceremony protocol. The trading floor below was buzzing with activity analysts and traders preparing for the day's session. Screens everywhere displayed our company logo alongside the morning's financial news. I scanned the gathering crowd of invited guests, immediately spotting my mother. She looked beautiful in a new dress she had bought specially for the occasion, her face glowing with pride. When our eyes met, she gave me a small wave and a smile that conveyed everything words could not. This moment was as much hers as mine, the culmination of her sacrifices and unwavering belief in me. To my surprise, Professor Martinez was also present, having accepted my invitation to witness the milestone. She had been the first person to see potential in my technical ideas, the one who had connected me to the incubator program that started it all. Seeing her among the guests brought a lump to my throat. As the ceremony time approached, I found myself searching the crowd for one more face. I had sent my father the formal invitation weeks ago, but had not received a definitive response about his attendance. Part of me hoped he would not come, sparing me the complicated emotions his presence would bring. Another part, the child still seeking approval. Despite everything, hoped he would be there to witness this triumph. Just as we were being called to the podium for the ceremony, I spotted him. Standing at the back of the crowd wearing an expensive suit and a somewhat uncomfortable expression was my father. Our eyes met briefly across the room, and he gave a small nod of acknowledgement. He had come after all. The NASDAQ official guided me to the podium, explaining the process for ringing the bell that would signal the start of trading, and officially launch Secure Shield as a public company. The massive digital displays outside in Times Square would broadcast the ceremony to thousands of passers-by, while financial networks carried it live to viewers around the world. "You will have a few minutes for remarks before the bell ringing," the official explained. Standing at the podium, looking out at the assembled guest cameras and the trading floor beyond, I felt a moment of perfect clarity. This was not just about proving my father wrong or achieving financial success. It was about building something valuable, something that made a difference, surrounded by people who had believed in the vision, even when success seemed impossible. "Thank you all for being here on this momentous day for Secure Shield." I began, my voice steady and clear. 6 years ago, I graduated from MIT with a computer science degree and an idea for a better approach to cybersecurity. Like many founders, I was told repeatedly that it could not be done, that I was too young, too inexperienced, that I should lower my ambitions. I paused, my eyes finding my mother in the crowd. What made the difference was not just persistence or technical innovation, though both were essential. It was having people who believed in me and our vision even when success was far from certain. People who offered support without waiting for proof, who saw potential before it was realized. As I spoke, I could see my father shift slightly at the back of the room, perhaps recognizing the implicit message in my words. Today, Secure Shield protects the data of over 20 million people through our client implementations. We have built a company that values both technical excellence and human dignity. Our success is measured not just in revenue or valuation, but in the trust our clients place in us and the security we provide to their users. I concluded by thanking our team, our investors, and our clients for their contributions to our journey. As I stepped back from the podium, the countdown to the bell ringing began. Surrounded by our executive team, with cameras capturing every moment I pressed the button that activated the famous NASDAQ bell, officially marking SecureShield's debut as a public company. The screens around us lit up with our stock symbol, an opening price $30 per share, significantly above our offering price, valuing the company at just over $2 billion on its first day of trading. Cheers erupted from our team and guests as confetti fell from the ceiling, a traditional NASDAQ celebration. In the midst of the celebration, I made my way to my mother, who enveloped me in a tight hug. "I am so proud of you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "So very proud." Professor Martinez was next, shaking my hand with genuine warmth. "I knew you were special from that first encryption project," she said. But even I did not imagine this. As the formal ceremony concluded and guests mingled at the reception, I noticed my father hovering awkwardly at the edge of the crowd. After a moment's hesitation, I approached him, curious about what he would say on this day that so thoroughly disproved his dismissal of my potential. "Congratulations, Emily," he said, extending his hand formally. "Quite an impressive achievement." "Thank you for coming," I replied, accepting the handshake. "You know," he continued, lowering his voice, "I always told you that independence was important. Looks like my pushing you to stand on your own paid off, did not it?" He gave a small chuckle, as if we were sharing an inside joke. I looked at him for a long moment, recognizing this attempt to reframe his abandonment as tough love to claim some credit for my success. "What paid off was hard work and the support of people who believed in me," I said finally, my tone polite but firm. "Today, I am grateful for everyone who contributed to this journey, especially those who were there from the beginning." The message was clear, and I could see in his eyes that he understood it. He nodded, a flash of something like regret crossing his face before he composed himself. "Well, you have certainly proven yourself," he said, deflecting as he always did. "The stock price speaks for itself." We were interrupted by Jacob approaching with news that several major financial networks wanted interviews. I excused myself, feeling strangely unburdened by the brief exchange. I had not sought confrontation or drama with my father, just clarity and truth. His presence today was neither a triumph nor a defeat, just a footnote in a story that was primarily about determination and the power of genuine support. The remainder of the day passed in a blur of interviews, congratulations, and monitoring the stock's performance. SecureShield shares closed their first day of trading at $38, up 35% from our offering price, a strong debut by any standard. That evening, we hosted a celebration dinner for the team and close supporters. Jacob stood to offer a toast, holding up his glass toward me. "To Emily, whose vision and leadership have brought us to this historic moment," he said. "The market has confirmed what we already knew, that SecureShield is not just valuable, but revolutionary. As of market close today, our CEO is officially a billionaire on paper." The announcement brought cheers and applause, but the reality of it took a moment to sink in. A billionaire. The word seemed to belong to someone else, not to the girl who had once counted pennies for ramen noodles, who had skipped meals to make rent, whose father had told her not to expect help because she had chosen the wrong major. As I looked around the table at the faces of those who had been part of this journey, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. The wealth was secondary to what we had built together, the lives we had touched, the security we had created for millions of users. My mother sat beside me, still somewhat dazed by the day's events and the implications of my new financial status. I squeezed her hand under the table, a silent promise that everything I had achieved would ensure her comfort and security for the rest of her life. The celebration continued late into the night, a fitting culmination of years of work and sacrifice. But as meaningful as the IPO was, I knew it was not an ending, but a new beginning. We were now accountable to public shareholders, subject to quarterly scrutiny and higher expectations. The real work of building SecureShield's future was just beginning. As guests began to depart, Jacob approached with a final update. "The Asian markets are responding well to our debut," he said. "All indicators suggest a strong opening again tomorrow." I nodded, grateful for his constant attention to detail. Thank you, Jacob. Not just for today, but for believing in this company when many did not. It was a good investment, he replied with a smile, both financially and personally. It has been an honor to help build something that matters. As I returned to my hotel room that night, exhausted but elated, I found myself reflecting on the text message that had once caused me so much pain. Don't expect help from me. You chose the wrong major. Time to stand on your own. Those words meant to diminish me had instead become the foundation of my determination. My father had been right about one thing, though not in the way he intended. I had stood on my own, not because I had no choice, but because I discovered I was capable of more than even I had imagined. The journey from that graduation day text to the NASDAQ bell had been filled with challenges, failures, and moments of doubt. But it had also been defined by the people who offered genuine support, who believed in the vision before success was assured, who stood by me through the hardest times. That I realized was the true lesson of my journey. Success is never achieved alone, despite the myths of self-made entrepreneurs. It grows from a community of support from people who see your potential and help you realize it. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new expectations, new opportunities. But tonight, I allowed myself to savor the moment to acknowledge how far I had come from that devastated graduate, clutching a phone with a crushing message. The wrong major had turned out to be exactly right after all. 6 months after our successful IPO, I found myself in a very different role as the chairwoman of a publicly traded company. The transition had been significant, with new responsibilities, heightened scrutiny, and the constant pressure of quarterly earnings reports and shareholder expectations. Our stock had performed well since the initial offering, with our market capitalization now hovering around $2.4 billion. The financial press had followed my story with interest, portraying me as an example of tech entrepreneurship succeeding against the odds. Business schools had invited me to speak about leadership and innovation positions that still felt strange for someone who had doubted her own abilities not so long ago. The most profound changes, however, were personal rather than professional. My mother had retired completely, moving into a beautiful home I had purchased for her in a quiet coastal town she had always loved. After decades of working multiple jobs just to survive, she was finally able to pursue her own interests, joining a community garden club and taking art classes at the local college. I never thought I would see the day when I did not have to check my bank account before buying groceries, she told me during one of our weekly calls. You have given me such a gift, Emily. You gave me the greater gift, I replied, thinking of her unwavering support through all the years of struggle. You believed in me when no one else did. Determined to extend that same support to others, I had established the Foster Foundation focused on providing educational opportunities and mentorship to young women in technology. Our flagship program was a scholarship specifically for daughters of single mothers, covering not just tuition, but living expenses, internship placements, and ongoing mentorship. The first cohort of 20 scholars had just been selected, brilliant young women from backgrounds similar to my own. Meeting them at our foundation launch event, hearing their stories and ambitions, had been one of the most rewarding experiences since the IPO. My new wealth had changed many practical aspects of my life, from where I lived to how I traveled, but I worked hard to maintain the values and perspective that had guided me before financial success. I still coded regularly, both to stay connected to our core technology, and because I genuinely loved programming. I still met regularly with newer employees, wanting to ensure that SecureShield maintained its innovative culture, despite its growing size. My relationship with my father remained complicated. After the IPO, he had made several overtures suggesting family dinners and sending occasional messages about my media appearances. I responded politely, but maintained emotional distance, unwilling to pretend that his sudden interest was not connected to my public success. Then came the unexpected call from his wife, Gabrielle. Emily, I am sorry to bother you, she said, her voice unusually subdued. Your father has had a heart attack. He is stable, but the doctors are concerned. He is asking for you. Despite our strained relationship, the news hit me harder than I expected. Whatever our differences, he was still my father, and the thought of losing him before resolving our complicated history was unsettling. I flew to Seattle that evening, arriving at the hospital to find him looking smaller and more vulnerable than I had ever seen him. Tubes and monitors surrounded his bed, the constant beeping a reminder of how precarious life could be, regardless of wealth or status. "Emily," he said when he saw me, his voice weak, "you came." "Of course I came," I replied, taking the seat beside his bed. We sat in awkward silence for a moment, the years of distance between us seemingly condensed into that quiet hospital room. "The doctors say I need to make some changes," he finally said. "Diet, exercise, stress management. Apparently, executives in their 60s with type A personalities are walking heart attacks waiting to happen." He attempted a smile that came out as more of a grimace. I nodded, unsure what to say. Our relationship had never allowed for casual conversation, and now faced with his mortality, the usual platitudes seemed inadequate. "I have been thinking a lot since yesterday." He continued, his gaze shifting to the window. "About choices, regrets, things I would do differently." I waited, sensing he had more to say. "I was wrong, Emily," he said, finally meeting my eyes directly. "About your degree, about not supporting you, about many things." The admission so long awaited caught me by surprise. I had imagined this moment many times over the years, but now that it had arrived, I felt oddly detached, as if watching a scene in a movie rather than experiencing it firsthand. "Why did you come to the IPO ceremony?" I asked the question that had lingered in my mind for months. He sighed, shifting uncomfortably in the hospital bed. "Pride, I suppose. Both kinds. I was proud of what you had accomplished, even if I had not supported it, and too proud to admit I had been wrong all those years ago." "You tried to take credit," I said quietly, "for making me independent." He had the grace to look ashamed. A father wants to believe he had some positive influence on his child's success, even when the evidence suggests otherwise. The conversation that followed was the most honest we had ever had. He spoke of his own father's harsh judgments, of feeling trapped in cycles of emotional distance he did not know how to break. I shared my perspective on how his rejection had affected me, the pain it had caused, but also the determination it had inadvertently fostered. It was not a perfect reconciliation, not the tearful reunion of movies where all is forgiven in an instant. It was messy and uncomfortable, with moments of defensiveness from him and lingering hurt from me. But it was a start, a first step towards something more genuine than we had ever managed before. As I prepared to leave, promising to return the next day, he reached for my hand. "I am sorry, Emily," he said simply. "Not just for the text message, but for all the times I failed to see your value. You deserved better." I nodded, accepting the apology, for what it was, a belated but sincere acknowledgement of past wrongs. "Thank you for saying that." In the weeks that followed, as he recovered, and we cautiously rebuilt some form of relationship, I came to understand that forgiveness was not really about absolving him of responsibility. It was about freeing myself from the weight of that old rejection, allowing me to move forward without the burden of seeking validation that would never fully satisfy. Meanwhile, Secure Shield continued to evolve and grow. We expanded into new markets, acquired two smaller security firms with complementary technologies, and launched a comprehensive security platform for small businesses previously unable to afford enterprise-level protection. My role increasingly focused on strategic vision and industry leadership, while our expanded executive team handled day-to-day operations. I found myself mentoring younger entrepreneurs, particularly women facing the same biases and challenges I had encountered. One such mentee was Sofia Rodriguez, a brilliant programmer developing a privacy-focused social media platform. After our initial meeting at a tech conference, we began regular coaching sessions where I shared insights from my journey. "How did you maintain confidence when everyone doubted you?" she asked during one session, after describing yet another investor meeting where her leadership had been questioned. "I focused on what I could control," I replied. "The quality of our product, the clarity of our vision, the strength of our team. External validation is unreliable and often comes too late to be helpful. You have to build your confidence from within." It was advice I wish someone had given me during those desperate early days, when each rejection had felt like confirmation of my father's dismissal. A year after our IPO, I was invited to deliver the commencement address at MIT's School of Engineering graduation ceremony. Standing at the podium, looking out at rows of graduates in their caps and gowns, I could not help but remember sitting in their place 7 years earlier, reading that devastating text message minutes before walking across the stage. "Your degree is not just a certification of technical knowledge," I told them. "It is proof of your persistence, your ability to solve complex problems, your willingness to face challenges that others might avoid. These qualities will serve you far beyond any specific coding language or engineering principle you have learned here." I shared parts of my journey from rejection to success, emphasizing the importance of resilience and self-belief. But I also stressed the value of genuine support systems and the obligation successful people have to create opportunities for others. True success is not measured by stock prices or media profiles, I concluded. It is measured by impact, by the lives you touch, by the problems you solve that matter. Find work that aligns with your values, surround yourself with people who believe in your potential, and remember that the most meaningful validation comes from within. As I returned to my seat amid applause, I felt a sense of completion of having come full circle from my own graduation day. The journey had not been what I expected, with more challenges and greater success than I could have imagined. But it had taught me invaluable lessons about resilient self-worth and the true nature of support. That evening after the ceremony, I sent a text message to my father, who was continuing his recovery and making efforts to rebuild our relationship. "Thank you for teaching me to stand on my own." I wrote, not with sarcasm, but with genuine acknowledgement that his rejection, however painful, had helped forge my determination. His reply came quickly. "I was wrong. You have always been extraordinary." 7 simple words, but they represented a transformation neither of us had thought possible. Not complete healing, not a perfect resolution to years of hurt, but a new understanding that allowed us both to move forward. As Secure Shield continued to grow and my foundation expanded its impact, I often reflected on the text message that had once seemed so crushing. "Don't expect help from me. You chose the wrong major. Time to stand on your own." Those words meant to diminish had instead become part of the foundation of something remarkable, a reminder that our greatest challenges often contain the seeds of our greatest achievements. The journey from graduation day rejection to NASDAQ success had not been easy or straightforward. It had included failures, doubts, and moments of near defeat. But it had also included triumphs, breakthroughs, and the discovery of strength I did not know I possessed. Have you ever had someone dismiss your dreams or tell you that you were making a mistake? How did you respond to their lack of faith in you? Share your story in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more journeys of resilience and determination. And do not forget to share with anyone who might need a reminder that rejection can sometimes be the beginning of an extraordinary path forward. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that sometimes the best motivation comes from those who believe you cannot succeed.